Hi, this is Claude White again, and I'm going to bring back something that I haven't done in quite some time. I used to have a segment called Forgotten Players, and the only one that I did was Andrew Toney, but I promise I'm going to do a lot more and in all different sports. I'm going to stick to basketball yet again, and I'm going to speak on the leading scorer of the 1980s. Now, a lot of people might think that the leading scorer of the 80s was Michael Jordan. Now, keep in mind, Jordan did not enter the league until 1985. Well, the 84-85 season. So that's about half the decade right there. Some people might think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but he was on the down end of his career for the most part. His last MVP season being the 79-80 season. Or you could bring up a guy like Moses Malone, and that would not be a bad guess because Moses Malone was second in the 80s in scoring. But the guy who led the 80s in total points is the legendary Hall of Famer that no one ever talks about anymore, the great Alex English. I remember Alex English very well with the Denver Nuggets. That's where he spent the bulk of his career. Now, he did not start out with the Nuggets. He actually started with the Milwaukee Bucks. Then they traded him to the Boston Celtics, then the Indiana Pacers. But he found his niche with the Denver Nuggets and that up-tempo style of Doug Moe, who really was the precursor to Mike D'Antoni. In fact, he had about the same success. He never won an NBA championship, let alone never made an NBA Finals. Now, those teams in today's NBA would flourish, but they did not play enough defense, just like today's NBA and Mike D'Antoni. But I digress. This particular segment is about the great Alex English, of course. And you know what? I found out something very interesting. Now, a certain article compared Alex English to Kobe Bryant. In fact, Kobe's scoring in the 2000s, and Alex English is scoring in the 80s. Now, Kobe scored slightly more points. He had 21,065 points, but he needed 29,476 minutes, whereas Alex English scored 21,018 points in only 29,208 minutes. So, in other words, the more efficient scorer was Alex English. And he didn't have to take as many shots to do so. Now, obviously, Kobe Bryant is a great player. Do I think that he's a top 5 player? Absolutely not. Now, Alex English, of course, never made it to the NBA Finals, but there were a couple of important reasons why. Number one, the aforementioned Doug Moe and the Denver Nuggets' lack of defense. But the biggest impediment to him going to a finals was, of course, the great Laker teams of the 80s. And you could make a case that those Laker teams are the best teams of all time. Those guys, they were obviously led by Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jamal Wilkes, later on James Worthy. And the guy who gets lost in the sauce is a guy that, remember, real Laker fans know there are only 3 Lakers with 5 championship rings from the 1980s. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the great defensive stalwart, Michael Cooper. Now, Alex English won only 1 scoring title, but again, he was a very consistent player, and his average of 26.3 points a game during the 80s, when you couple that with the amount of points that was scored, he was the greatest scorer of the 1980s that no one ever talks about. In fact, you don't even hear about him as far as being a great Denver Nugget. You hear about Carmelo Anthony. Allen Iverson was mainly a 76er. He only had a cup of coffee with the Nuggets about 4 seasons. But Alex English is by far the best Nugget player, save Dan Issel, that the franchise has ever had. And when you get a chance, please look up the great Alex English, the Hall of Famer, and he was inducted back in 1997. Please like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claude White. Take care, and God bless.